Okay, so welcome to our second session, and I'm going to take Psalm 119, verses 1 through 8 for our prayer. Psalm 119. Psalm 119. So let us begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Bless those whose way is blameless, who walk by the law of the Lord. Bless those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with all their heart. They do no wrong. They walk in God's ways. You have given them the command to observe your precepts with care. May my ways be firm in the observance of your statutes. Then I will not be ashamed to ponder all your commandments. I will praise you with sincere heart as I study your righteous judgments. I will observe your statutes. Do not leave me all alone. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Now I took that text because it celebrates the Torah. Because by now you know that the Torah talk about God's actions. God's actions for the people. The Torah itself means law, as we have said, but it talks about story. It has stories, and those stories about God's action on behalf of Israel. And Israel feels, when they read that story, they feel like they have to respond to God, and that feeling therefore becomes law for them. So the Torah is law. How it becomes law is that it is a story about God's action. And when they read that story, what God has done for them, they feel like they have to respond. They have to give back. That obligation, that feeling of wanting to do something in response to God. I have to do this. I ought to do this. That is what becomes law for them. And so for them, Torah is law. And I took this Psalm 119 begins with that. It is a praise of God's law, that God gave us God's own action. God reveals to us what God has already done for us, including our very lives. And so we therefore know that if someone gave me something, there is a reason. When someone gives me something, even a gift, when someone gives me a gift, the person actually thinks about who I am and what I like and what I like to have, what I like to do. So the gift always is related to knowing me. So when God gave us something, God gave it to us because God knows us, and God gives it to us for a purpose, that purpose. So we have to know ourselves, and we have to know ourselves through the gift that God has given to us. And then we will know the right way to answer. What is the law, God's law for us? So that's what Israel feels. That's what is recorded in the Torah. And for us Christians, that's where we draw our faith. Our faith began from there, from this perspective. And last time we talked about the name Torah. So that's what I've just unpacked again. The name Torah. Today we are going to talk about the names of each of the books and their contents, how together they form the Torah, the 5 books. But so today we're going to accomplish that. We're going to know the names of each of the first 5 books of Moses. And we will talk about their content, each of them, their contents. And at the end of today's session, I know if someone calls you and tells you, what will I expect to see when I read Leviticus? You should be able to say it. This is my goal for this session. When someone asks you, what is in Deuteronomy? You can tell the person what is in what Deuteronomy is about. The book of Deuteronomy is about. What is in Genesis? You can articulate that. You can share your insight, because you will at the end of this session have an insight into those 5 books, their names and their contents. Okay. So for the benefit of those who were not here last week, this is the summary of what we accomplished last week. We got to the place of the 5 books, the place of the Torah in our faith, or how we understand the Torah. And we said that the Torah is the central part of the First Testament. Okay? It is the central part of the First Testament. These 5 books are the center. The things that are there are the main deal. Everything else outside of these 5 books, everything else outside them is a commentary on the things that happen in these books. These books are the raw material. They are the relationship of God and a people. And everything, if you read from the prophets were commenting on God's relationship with Israel. If you read from the book of Kings, it's commenting on that. If you read the Psalms are commenting on that. We just read Psalm 119, talking about the law of the Lord. The law of the Lord. You know, if you read from the wisdom books, they are talking about the Torah, the things that happen in the Torah. If you read, and even if you come to the New Testament is taking what happened in the Torah and clarifying it and amplifying it and deepening it for us, making it relevant, usable in our own lives, how we live our lives with God. So the Torah, I said, is the central part of the First Testament. But where I'm going is, the next thing you know, I'm going to make it also the central part of the entire Bible. It's also going to be the central part of the entire Bible. But the New Testament, the gospel of Jesus Christ, Jesus' life is for me and you, Jesus' life is the clarification of the Torah. The life that Jesus gave to me and you when we were baptized, the life that we inherited, the law that we inherited, is the clarification of the Torah, making the Torah usable for you and I in our day and age. Okay. And I'm saying this for me and you because we are both Catholic Christians and we understand it from that angle. It might not do the same with the Muslim, or it might not do the same with somebody from Judaism. They will say no. But but for us, Jesus Christ takes what the Torah is and clarifies it for me and you. And we have decided to respond to God in that way, in the Christian way. So the Torah is a central part of the First Testament, and that makes it a central part of the raw material for the entire Bible. And then we said the second thing, the Torah is God's work in human history and human response to God's work, that work. Okay, as I've said already, I've said much about that already. So the Torah talks about a story, and that story is God's work. And human being also responds to it. These are the things you will read from the Torah. Okay, and then the Torah accounts for two origins. The first one is the origin, Israel, the Israelite nation's origin. Where did Israel come from? Who is Israel? And what is the relevance of Israel? Where did Israel come from? Who is Israel? And what is Israel supposed to represent or do? And then it accounts for humanity as a whole. Where does human being come from? So the Torah accounts for these two origins. Human origin, the entire humanity, and the Israelite nation, Israel nation's origin. Okay, there is a connection over there. Okay, that Israel becomes a representative of the rest of humanity. That when what we see, what God is doing with Israel, makes us come to understanding, have an idea of what God will do with the rest of humanity, or human beings. Because Israel is a sample of humanity. Israel was taken as an example of humanity. Okay. And then finally we said Exodus. So we said the whole Torah is a central part of the First Testament, but Exodus, the book of Exodus, which is the second book in the Torah, the second book is the heart of the Torah itself. Okay. The second book is the heart of the Torah because that is, the second book is what talks about the creation of Israel nation. But in the first book, Genesis, there's nothing called Israel. It is Israel that wrote Genesis, that wrote the first book. So Israel must exist first. If Israel does not exist, there is no Genesis. Okay. If there is no Exodus and Israel, when you think about Exodus, you should think about Israel. Without Exodus, there is no Israel. It is Exodus that made the nation Israel. And it's the nation that wrote all these books, including Genesis. So Genesis did not exist without Exodus existed before Genesis. Okay. The people in Exodus, they were the ones who sat down and began to write the beginning, the origin of humanity, and wrote it in Genesis. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. So that makes Exodus the actors, the real actors of all the things that took place in the Torah. Exodus, the people in Exodus wrote all that. They account for all that. So they must exist. They must be the beginning. And so it is the heart of the Torah. Okay? So that is where we got to. And now we want to talk about the names of each of the books and their contents. And I have a little principle for us to do this. The principle is that for the name of the book, each book is named from the meaning of the book's first Hebrew word. So in the Hebrew Bible, in the Hebrew word, the original language of the Bible, the first word in the book is what gives us the name, the English name, the English name that we came up with, which is a Greek name that when we talk about Greek is a foreign language for the Bible. The original language for the Old Testament is Hebrew and Aramaic. Aramaic is a kind of Old Hebrew, okay? Old Hebrew, okay? But at some point, it was the Bible was translated into Greek when the Greeks colonized and conquered the whole of Palestine and the whole of Europe. They forced their language on the people, and so many of their books were also translated into Greek. Okay. So when they translated it into Greek, what they did was they looked at the first word in Hebrew, and its meaning is what made them give the names Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Okay. So the names come from the first words. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the first names in Hebrew, and then we will see how it made its way into the name in English or Greek and English. The English took it from the Greek. Okay, and then for the content, if we want to know what is in each of the books, we are going to look at the ending verses and the ending words. The ending words of these verses give us insights into what each book of the Pentateuch talks about. The Pentateuch is the same as the Torah. Okay, each book tells a story, history or her story or his story, in which we find what God has done for the Israelites and what the Israelites are supposed to do or ought to do in response. So we are going to see all the words in the end of each of the books. For the content, you go to the end of the book, you look at the last word in that book. The last word will tell you something about what this book is about. Okay, for the content, we go to the end. For the name, we look at the beginning. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. And if we do, as I put there, if we do with the content, we'll find out the words Egypt, journey, Sinai, Jericho, Israel. These are the last words of the 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We're going to see them all right now. Okay. So let us dive into it. Genesis. We know the book, the first book, Genesis. The name in Hebrew, the name of the first word in that book is Bereshit. Okay, Bereshit. Bereshit means in the beginning. Okay, Bereshit is the Hebrew word. Okay. Bereshit Daba Yahweh. Bereshit Daba is creation. God, in the beginning, God created. Bereshit Daba. God Daba Yahweh. Bereshit in English means in the beginning. So the Greeks named this book when they were translating the Hebrew into English. Into Greek, they translated it to Genesis. Okay, they gave it the name generating and the beginning, the genesis of a book, of something. Okay, so the first word in Hebrew, if you go to the synagogue and they are reading from Genesis, you will not hear in the beginning. You will hear Bereshit Daba Yahweh. Okay, something like that. Okay. Then, so we know the name Genesis comes from that, Bereshit. Don't forget that. And then the content. The content comes from the last word of the last verse of that book. Genesis has 50 chapters. And so if you look at Genesis chapter 50, verse 26, which is the last word in Genesis, the last word is Egypt. And Joseph, this is the quote, Genesis chapter 50, verse 26, and Joseph died, being 110 years old. He was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. So the story tells you that, so Egypt, the whole of Genesis ends not in Israel, not in any place, it ends in Egypt. It means that the Hebrew people live their lives, and the book is talking about how the Hebrew people found themselves in Egypt. Okay, everything that went on until they found them, they were going about, but they ended up in Egypt. So you are talking about everything that transpired in the life of the Hebrews until finally they ended up in Egypt. Okay, so Egypt can direct you about where the history of the Hebrew people, and I'm calling them Hebrew people because at this time they were not Israel. They are not a nation yet. Okay, they are Hebrew individual little families, little tribes, but they are not a nation. They don't have an army. They don't have a king. They don't have priests. They don't have anything like that. There was no cohesion. Nobody calls nobody. Come together, let us pray. No, it's just families. Okay. So before Israel became a nation, before the Hebrew people became a nation, the life that they led, all of that geared towards Egypt. They had to be there. They found themselves there. Okay. All right. So that's how we know what is in Genesis. Genesis is about from the beginning of creation all the way to the Hebrew people found themselves in Egypt. What happened before they found themselves in Egypt? Okay. Okay. And we will come to read each of the stories. We'll come to dive into it. But right now, from your understanding, you can tell what is in Genesis. So let us look at Exodus. So Exodus, the first Hebrew word or words are We'ele Shemoth. Okay, We'ele Shemoth. And that means, and these are the names. And these are the names. Okay, these are the names. Is actually talking about you are talking about the names of a group of people that are being constituted into a nation or into a community. Okay, so they actually putting together the names of the tribes of Israel. Okay, so when you think about these are the names, I'm sorry, these are the names. We are talking about the people who became the nation Israel. So that's Exodus, who took part in the journey. They didn't become a nation until they took part in the journey. Okay, and so Israel, when we use We'ele Shemoth, we are talking about those who took part in the journey. Okay, so that name was given, the journey Exodus was given to the book. The Greeks looked at the first words We'ele Shemoth, and these are the names. These are the names of what? These are the names of those who made the journey, those who traveled. Okay, those who exited, or those who took part in the Exodus. Okay, those who took part in the migration. Let's put it that way. And so those who were on the move, the names of the families that were on the move. So the Greeks called the book Exodus. These are the names of the groups that left Egypt. Okay? That left Egypt. Remember, they ended up in Egypt. Genesis says they ended up in Egypt. And Exodus says they got out of Egypt. How they got out of Egypt. These are the people who got out of Egypt. Okay? So that's the name. That's what gives us the name. And then the content, when we want to look at the content, what is in Exodus? The last word is journey. Okay, journey. So the journey, the book of Exodus is all talking about running away and being on fleeing. They left Egypt and they didn't stop journeying until they got to Mount Sinai and moved on. But Exodus is about that. Exodus is that's the word. Exodus itself even gives it away. So for the clouds in the last the content, the last word comes here. It says, "For the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, before the eyes of all the house of Israel at each stage of their journey." Okay. So journey is the end. So when you think about journey, you know what took place in Exodus. What Exodus is talking about. It's all about Israelite in flight, in migration, in movement, in traveling. Okay. Exodus chapter 40, verse 38. This also tells you how many chapters are in each of the books. You should lock that in also right away. You know that Genesis has 50 books. We know that Genesis has 50 chapters. 50 chapters. And then we come to Exodus. We know that the end of Exodus is chapter 40. Okay. And 40 verse 38, that's the end. And so that's the word journey we see over there. And that can tell you what is in Exodus. Okay, and then let's move on to Leviticus. Okay, Leviticus, that name Leviticus itself is a name of someone, a priest. Okay, or one of the children of Jacob. One of the children of Jacob is called Levi. Okay, Levi. And Jacob's children, Jacob's sons, each of them form a tribe of Israel, a family of Israel. So the Levi tribe or Levi family is the priestly tribe. They became the priests of Israel. But their name was given to this book because of those first words, okay? And that is Wayikra. Wayikra means in English, or in Greek, which was translated into English, and he called. Okay, the priests were people who were called. Okay, the priests were people who were called. So this book actually accounts, when you read it, it accounts for. Well, let's just stay here. Let's just say, and he called. The priests were those who are called, and so the name Levi was given. Levi's name was given to because they were the priests. They became the priests. Okay, and so that name was given to. If you think about vocation, if you think about calling, that can help you to understand why this book is called Leviticus. Okay, the Greek, when they are about to translate, when you go to the Hebrew Bible, you won't find the name Leviticus. Okay, you won't see the name Leviticus. These are the Greek names that were given to it. Okay, the Greeks translated into that, but you will see the word Wayikra. They saw the word Wayikra in the beginning of the book, and they linked it to a vocation, the priestly vocation, and so they took the priestly tribe's name, Levi, Leviticus. Okay, the book that in this particular case, it also ties into what is in the book itself. So let's look at the content too. The content, the ending word is Sinai. Okay, Sinai. So you know what happened at Mount Sinai, right? So at Mount Sinai, God gave them the laws, and giving them the laws, and give them the priesthood too. So God made them a nation by giving them the law. The law is about the priests are supposed to help the people to obey the laws, to sacrifice, to do all these things. The priesthood, these people are priestly people. Yeah? They are priestly people. Okay. So the book talks about how these people behave as priestly people. Okay, the book describes the fact that this is a nation of priests, priestly people, holy people, chosen people, and so Sinai comes to where when you hear the word Sinai, Mount Sinai is where Moses got the laws, and the laws are about this relationship between God and the people. And the priests were the ones who were doing that work. That mediation is what. So Sinai, and Leviticus chapter 27, verse 34, that verse concludes the book of Leviticus. It says, "These are the commandments that the Lord gave to Moses for the people of Israel on Mount Sinai." Okay, on Mount Sinai. So you can think about how these people, you can talk about Leviticus being, talking about how God made these people a priestly people, a law-abiding people sacrificing all the time, making sacrifices all the time to God. Okay, so then we have Leviticus, and then the next book is the book of Numbers. So the Greek called this book Numbers. Looking at the first word from Hebrew, Waye Dabar, and it's Dabar, Waye Dabar. It's more talking about God spoke, or He spoke, and He spoke to them. Now, this one is not too. We're not too clear about it. But one explanation says that it is actually speaking to people it's an extension of giving the law. It's an extension of giving the law. When he's speaking to them, he's also commanding them. But how that translates into Numbers is that there are a number of commandments. Okay, so this and that and that. When he's speaking, he's also arranging the numbers of law, the numbers of the law. You know how many laws the Israelites have? It's not just 10 commandments. It's about 600 or something laws. Okay. So the 10 commandments are something like the 10 commandments are like the preamble. The preamble, like in our constitution, our law in the United States, we have a preamble we, the people of the United States, have decided to do this and that and that. That's the preamble, okay? And then you have the articles coming, article after article after article, and then there are amendments. So you're like counting, different count of the law, okay? So in the Israelites book also, in the Israelites tradition, there are over 600 and something laws, but the Ten Commandments are the preamble to the entire law. Okay, so God says, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and you shall have no God before me, and this is you shall do this, you shall do that. Up to those 10. Those are the preamble. Okay. But there are more than 10 commandments. Okay. And therefore the counting of them, the Greeks look at that, translating the Bible, they looked at that and then they say, well, we'll call this numbers. Number of laws. Okay. So a number of laws. Okay. And then when you go to the content of the book, that makes a little sense. The word Jericho is the name of a city. And you know where that city is found? That city is the last city by the river Jordan. On the western side of the Jordan, the people traveled, they journeyed all the way to the eastern side of the river Jordan, and they camped there for a while because they knew that there were a lot of people, hostile community that's ready to fight them when they get in. Jericho was on the other side, a western border, going to Jerusalem. Jericho is on the other side, and they camped at the eastern side. They camped there, and that is where Moses died. That is where Moses didn't go cross the Jordan with them. So when they crossed the river Jordan, they fought this last battle, the Battle of Jericho, okay, before they can get access to march on to Jerusalem, to march on to the land, the promised land. So Numbers actually takes us to Jericho, okay? And so you can think about that and say, this book is talking about the people's journey and journey all the way to the banks of the river Jordan before they took the promised land. Okay, took them to the end. Okay, because Jericho was the last fight. But even that fight, that Battle of Jericho, you remember that Moses had to hold his hand up, and the people had to hold his hand, and so that they can win the war. When Moses' hand was up, they were winning the war. When Moses' hands were down, they were losing the war. Okay, so that's the end of the Torah, so to speak. Okay, but we have another book we are going to talk about, and I'll tell you what that is. But now, so Jericho is the last word, and you find that in Numbers chapter 36, verse 13. Okay, and that says, "These are the commandments and the ordinances that the Lord commanded through Moses to the Israelites in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho." See? By the Jordan at Jericho. But you see, the name is talking about the number of the commandments. The number of the commandments. These are the commandments and ordinances. Okay, so that's what we got the name, the number of laws. And then, but Jericho tells us that this is talking about their journey to the eastern bank of the river Jordan, and that is where they fought the last battle, before they got the promised land. That promised land that was promised to Abraham, it took all these before they were able to get to the promised land. Yes, we got a question.
Well, okay. Well, he's going to have to.
Can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I was just looking at the map and recollecting our
Yes.
Israel a couple of years ago. Jericho's on the west side of the river.
Yes. Yes.
And Moses never crossed the river.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
But
Yes.
this says that he commanded through Moses in Moab,
Yes.
east side of the river.
Eastern side. Yes. 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 I think I was quoting the different battle. So they fought one battle there was one battle they fought before they crossed over. So the battle I was referring to is surely not the battle of Jericho, because Joshua was the one who took them across, and then they fought the battle of Jericho. But when they were in the plains of Moab, they fought a war too. There was a war when Moses had to lift up his hands, and Joshua and the people were fighting the war, and the Lord told them to make sure Moses lifts his hand. But Moses was growing tired, so some young men were sent to hold his hand up, to keep his hands up so that they can win the war. So that it's good that you pointed that out, because that corrects me. It was not the Battle of Jericho. The Battle of Jericho, they had to cross over to fight the Battle of Jericho. Yeah, and it was Joshua. Moses did not cross with them. Moses died in the plains of Moab. Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out. I was quoting the two different battles, but they've been fighting battle after battle, and Jericho's battle was the last one before they got access to the promised land. Okay, let's go on. So we got that with the content. The content of the book of Numbers comes from the word Jericho. We know that this is what happened. This is the last thing. This is where they were when. This is where what is reported, what they were on their way, on their journey to the promised land. This is the part of it that they had to fight to get access to the land. And it's in Numbers chapter 36, which tells you too that you have 36 chapters in the book of Numbers. Okay, 36 chapters. Okay, and then we will come back when we go deeper into these things. It will be more clarified. So then the last book is Deuteronomy. The Greeks called the book Deuteronomy, and because they look at this book and it's full of laws, but that is for the content. Let us just look at the name in Hebrew. The name in Hebrew, what the Greeks saw was Ele Hade Barim. Ele Hade Barim means these are the words. These are the words. We saw one that says these are the names. These are the words. The word is the law also. The words are the Lord's. The word of the Lord is also the law of the Lord. So when they see this, but they have seen the laws in Numbers too. Okay, so what they're doing here is that they call this book, when they saw this book full of laws, they couldn't call them like Numbers anymore. So what they did was they called it a second law. Okay, the Greeks called it second law. Deutero means second. Deutero. Nomos, nomi, or nomos, or norm is law. Okay, so the Greeks called this name Deuteronomy to show that this is the second law. But what is actually happening here is that the laws that they had before, which Numbers, we see in Numbers, those laws were the laws that Moses was putting together for them, okay, getting from God to them. But then they read this book, the Greeks, when they translated these books, they read this book, and the first word they saw, these are the words again, that got to be a second law. Okay, so they said that this is a second law. What we understand is that Moses actually compiled this. Moses made a summary of all the laws. These laws are not that different from the first law, but Moses put them all together and gave it to them to represent Moses for them. So if you go on, let us look at the content. The content, the ending word is Israel. Okay, Israel is the full-blown nation. It's a full-blown nation. How these people became a full-blown nation? A nation is a group of people that has a constitution that fully. If you don't have a constitution, they can't forge a nation. If you don't have laws, you can't forge a nation. If you have half laws, you can't forge a nation. The nation won't be full. So if they are talking about Israel as the last word can tell you that this is a fully blown Israel with a full-blown constitution. Okay, Israel has a full constitution, and that constitution is what we find in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy has the summary. It has everything that is put together, fully fledged constitution. The book of Deuteronomy is actually the book that the Israelites hold as their constitution. Okay, the book of Deuteronomy. No other book is the law, is the real code, the code of laws. The codes are all found in this book. Okay, and it's believed that, you see, Moses was not going to go to the promised land with them. And so Moses summarized all the laws, and the laws, therefore, are the things that are going to guide, because since Moses is not there, there will be nobody to guide them. So the law becomes Moses in their midst. They carried that. They carried that as Moses, where they get the laws from. Moses was the person they were getting the laws from until Moses died. When Moses was about to die, he put these laws into this book, and this book, therefore, becomes Moses. So when you read from the New Testament, when they tell Jesus that Moses told us to do this and do that and do that, they are not talking about the person Moses. They're talking about this book. The Mosaic law. When we talk the Mosaic law, Deuteronomy is what we're talking about. Okay, it's the law. Moses is the law giver, and he's the law, and that Deuteronomy is the presence of Moses among them. If they want to find out anything, they consult Deuteronomy. They consult the book of Deuteronomy in order to find what they are to do. Because Deuteronomy consists of the summary. And when you say, Moses asked us to do this, Moses taught us this, Moses did this, Moses did that. So the book of Deuteronomy, another name for the book of Deuteronomy is Moses. Moses. Okay? Moses is Deuteronomy. Okay? So the last verse over there we find is Deuteronomy chapter 34, verse 10 through 12. It says, never since has there arisen a prophet in Israel like Moses. And for all the mighty deeds and all the terrifying displays of power that Moses performed in the sight of Israel. Now, remove the there. Remove there out of there. It doesn't fit in there. I think it was typed. So the sight of Israel. So what we are talking about here is that Moses is. This is why Moses' name was given to all these 5 books. But Moses did not write all these 5 books. Moses is the hero because all this book, the Torah, is talking about law. Everything in this book is talking about what brings the Israelites to think that they ought to do something. The stories in all these 5 books brings us to this point. At the end of it, the book of Deuteronomy summarizes it all for us as the law, Moses. But the Greeks when they found that in translating they called it the second law, Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy. Okay, that's the name, the first words. Okay. So with that, so the content, what the history, how the history is narrated in these 5 books are these. You first have the creation and the history of humankind, humanity, okay, human beings, not Israel. We're talking about the origin of humanity. Israel is talking about that, okay? The Israelites are the ones talking. The stories in the Bible, in these books, are Israel's account of how the world came to be, why the world came to be and everything. It's their story. It's their perspective. It's their understanding, okay? So they start from creation of humanity, the history of humanity, and that goes from Genesis chapters 1 through 11. It's about the origin of humanity. It's a prehistory. These are fables. They are not historical accounts, okay? They are stories that carry messages. Okay? They are not giving us scientific understanding of how the world came to be. That's not what they were doing. They have no idea, no science to that. They were telling stories to account for the beginning, how the world came to be. Okay? So Genesis chapters 1 to 11, keep that. We'll come back, we'll emphasize on this again next time. And then they go on to tell the history of Israel's ancestors. The first person to begin to actively work towards the nation Israel. So they talk about the patriarchs, their fathers, okay? From Genesis chapter 12 to 36, you are now talking about Israel, the beginning of Israel. Not Israel yet, but the raw material, the original people who actually brought Israel about later. So Genesis chapters 12 to 36, that's where you find the patriarchs, the fathers. And then they go on to talk about how they got to Egypt. how the little tribes got to Egypt. Remember, we said that Genesis ends in Egypt. Okay, so they talk about that from chapters 37 through 50, and 37 already begins to talk about Joseph. You know how they got to Egypt, right? It's through Joseph. Joseph was sold to Egypt, and that's what the rest of the story led us there. And then they go on to tell about how they got out of Egypt. Okay, so they ended up how they got out of Egypt. That's the Exodus chapters 1 through 18. Okay, then they go on to talk about when they got out of Egypt, what did God do with them? Okay, God made them into a nation by giving them a covenant. Okay, in Mount Sinai. So, or the other name, these two names are interchangeable. There is a Sinai. Mount Sinai is the same mountain that is called Mount Horeb. The different writers refer to different names for the same mountain. Okay, so the covenant at Sinai, God, that's what God. It's like God freed them from Egypt, from slavery, and then married them. If you want to be with somebody, but the person is under bondage, well, the first thing you have to do is to free the person, and then you can make a contract with the person. So God freed them from Egypt, and then made a contract with them, covenant with them. They became God's people, and God became their God. Okay, that was it. That was a covenant. Then they talk about how they wandered from Mount Sinai. Now they are people, but how they wandered through the desert all the way to the wilderness, all the way through the desert towards the eastern bank of the River Jordan. Okay, so that is also recorded in the book of Numbers, the last parts of the book of Numbers, and then finally how they arrived at the eastern bank of the River Jordan. What they were doing in the eastern bank of the River Jordan, and we are saying that is where Moses died. But before he died, he summarized, he gave them this law, which is a summary, which is not a different law, but a summary of the entire thing that God has been doing for them, which when they read, they can find what they have to do in response to God's work. Okay. So that's this is what we have right now. I am going to stop here. The next thing we need to do is to talk about who wrote the book of Genesis. And then we'll talk about the theological messages, the most important themes of. We're going to talk about the most important themes of these 5 books. There are 4 of them. Okay, there are 4 of them. We need to talk about that. I will send to you an outline of these 4 theological themes of the 4 books. These themes are the ones that you have to keep in mind when you hear a reading from any part of the Torah. These 4 themes should not leave you. You should understand them from the perspective of these 4 themes. And I'll send that to you next week. And I'm saying this because next week we will not be able to meet. I am traveling next week to give a talk in Los Angeles to the priests over there. And so I will not be here next Thursday. And it happens that the following Thursday is Thanksgiving. So we will not be able to meet on Thanksgiving. And after that, the following Thursday will be our Advent reconciliation. Our Advent reconciliation. So we're going to be away for 3 weeks, but I am going to keep you engaged. We're going to send you, we're going to find a way to keep the link. So stay tuned to our flock notes, and we will direct you accordingly. Is there any questions? So the next time we'll get together will be after Christmas. Is that it? Because the following Thursday, December the 8th, is also the Feast of the Immaculate Conception.
One thing after another.
Yeah, so the next time we will meet will be December 15. December 15, you can mark that down. December 15 is the next time we will be like this. But as I'm saying, we're going to keep you engaged. I'm going to give you a lot of homework. Hey! So I would like to thank you all for coming, and would like to stop here. And God bless you. I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. And until we meet like this again, God bless you. But check your flock notes. Blessings.